Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK. Thanks for joining us today on this latest edition of eWEEK eSpeaks. This is a series of interviews that we do with IT thought leaders here in Silicon Valley and around the world, actually. And we get to learn quite a bit about new products, new companies, and new people in the business. Our interviewee today is Ayal Yogev, who is the CEO of Anjuna. Is that correct? You are the CEO, right, Ayal?
Yes, that's right, Chris.
I like to go right to the top when I talk to a company. So I'm glad I have the right CEO here. So thank you. Thanks for joining us today on eSpeaks.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure.
Tell me a little bit about your background and about what Anjuna does.
Sure. I guess at a high level, the problem that we solve is the fact that you can simultaneously use and secure data. And I ran into that problem, basically, being in the industry. And I actually started my career in the public sector. I was in Unit 8200, which is the Israeli equivalent of the NSA. And we actually ran into that problem there when we had to run code in places where we obviously didn't necessarily trust, the infrastructure of the countries where the code was running. And we needed to make sure that if that code ever fell into the wrong hands, nobody would be able to understand exactly, what the code was doing or what data the code was using. I then moved to the private sector, and I ran into that exact problem there. I was essentially throughout my career in product management and leading product management organizations in enterprise security companies like Imperva, Lookout, and eventually OpenDNS, which was acquired by Cisco. And we ran into that exact same problem there. We needed to protect, private keys for our customers that were in the clear in memory, and there was just no good way of doing this.
Yeah, boy, the Israeli military is just known far and wide for its security prowess, and you're a direct graduate, quote unquote, of that whole system, aren't you? And you brought that whole uh, just sensibility to Anjuna. Are you actually in the Middle East right now, or what?
No, I'm here in the US in Palo
Oh,
Alto.
oh, okay. All right, never mind. I was just hoping we'd be intercontinental, but it's okay. We're fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where we are these days anyway with these conferences.
Exa- Yep,
So tell
exactly.
me, tell me a little bit about the secure enclave that Anjuna makes, and why it's such a promising tech.
Sure. As I mentioned, this problem of being able to secure data while it's being used has been this sort of long, standing problem in security. This has been a problem for over, 20 years since I've, started in the security space,
Yeah.
and there was never a really good way of solving this. And essentially, what has changed in the last few years is that the CPU vendors, Intel, AMD, ARM, have all added these, capabilities into their CPUs that allow you, for the first time to actually solve that problem and
Right.
process and secure data while it's being used. So
Mhm.
that's a huge shift. And what we do at Anjuna is we just make it extremely simple for enterprises to use this. This is very similar to what VMware did with virtualization, where the building blocks were part of the operating system for a very long time, but nobody was really using it because of how difficult it was. And then VMware built a software stack on top of it to just make it super simple for anybody to use.
Right.
And that was sort of the birth of the public cloud, right? This was the birth of virtualization.
Mhm.
So we're essentially doing the same for secure enclaves. The technology is there. The implications, I'd love to get into what the implications are going to be. So regardless of what we do, but there's a lot of, I think it's going to shift, the security industry in a big way. Um, and what we do, our sort of small part of this is just making it extremely simple to use.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. If it's usable, it'll get used. If it's not, it won't. I mean, what did Steve
Exactly.
Jobs say years ago? What good is a good piece of software if the user interface is no good? I mean, that's basically what he said. So
Exactly.
it's got to work. Tell me a little bit about your partnership with Redis Labs too. Redis is a company we've followed at eWEEK for a while. Very progressive thinking company. How does Anjuna work with Redis?
Sure. So we've partnered with Redis to bring into the market the first database in a secure enclave. And the idea of Redis, the sort of claim to fame of Redis is they're extremely, fast and performant databases. And the reason why they're so performant is they're an in-memory database, meaning the data is always in memory, which is what makes them fast, but that also poses a security risk in the sense that if the data is always in memory, anybody with access to the infrastructure can just get access to anything within the database. So running, Redis, the Redis database or other databases in a secure enclave is just such a clear, value to end customers, because it allows you to get all the benefits of Redis while still securing the data and making sure that nobody with access to the infrastructure or the employees of the public cloud that the company's running on has any access to the data within the Redis database.
Yeah. We listed Anjuna, we at eWEEK listed Anjuna as one of the companies to watch in the burgeoning field of quote unquote confidential computing. And this is an organization that's just kind of officially taken shape in the last year with a consortium that includes a bunch of pretty big name companies like Microsoft and VMware and Intel and others. Can you talk a little bit about how Anjuna fits into that? Because what you're doing is you're really plugging that gap, that hole that's been there in security for a long time. And how does Anjuna? Anjuna fits right into that whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So in a sense, you have this shift that's happening in the infrastructure, and as I mentioned, all the CPU vendors have added this support, and now you see all the the hypervisors have added support. VMware being the last one with ESXi7, and then you see all the public clouds supporting this as well. Microsoft, AWS announced their solution, Google Cloud launched their solution recently, and then IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, all the clouds are adopting this. And then you have the the enterprise or the customers that need, the organizations that need the solution, and they have these problem that they've known existed for a while, and they're doing a lot of things to try to mitigate, and make that problem smaller, but there's never a really good solution for this. And what we do is we plug exactly sort of in the middle of this to get this new technology that exists now in every public cloud and make it easy for these enterprises and organizations to leverage it.
Yeah. And finally, Ayal, how is it deployed? Is it a cloud service? Is it on a server? Is it up to the customer? What?
So I guess so we can think about VMware as sort of exactly how we deploy. We're a software solution. You deploy on the server to essentially run any application, confidentially inside of a secure enclave without any changes to the application. No need to recompile. Again, very similar to what VMware did with virtualization. Plus, we have a management layer on top of that. Again, very similar to VMware to just manage the deployments.
Yeah. Ayal, what are the implications for confidential computing to the industry looking ahead for the next year to 3 years?
So yeah, so this is sort of what's the most exciting piece for this, for me personally, because confidential computing and secure enclaves is probably the biggest shift happening in security since the invention of private public keys. And that shift has obviously changed security significantly, and it was I think you wrote about it, Chris. This was sort of the birth of things like e-commerce, right? Or online banking. You could never trust anybody online without public private keys.
Right.
And now secure enclaves is sort of the next big shift in security. And this will be sort of the birth of a lot of these newer technologies that are going to be, born on top of it. So one, it's going to change existing industries. The fact that you can protect data while it's being used means that you can continue to protect that data as it leaves the memory to go into storage or to the network with keys that are only available to the application while it's being used, which means the encryption market is going to change. The key management market is going to change. The microsegmentation market, the classification and DLP market, all these markets are going to look, very different or disappear over the next, I'd say 5 to 10 years because of this, how this technology is going to roll out. But even more, this is going to be the birth of a lot of new things that are just not possible today because the security technology doesn't exist. It's going to impact privacy, security. Think about things like a crowdsourced cloud, where today nobody can really use, you have all these access CPUs in people's homes, but it's really, no bank is going to think about using, the CPUs in people's homes. But if you have confidential computing, you can finally use something like this. You can do things like multi-party computations, where multiple parties can share data to run a computation without sharing the data with each other. You can do things like identity-based microsegmentation, meaning you can say to an application, you can only talk to these 3 applications, and that's it. And the application will not, talk or share data with any other application. Again, these are things that are, that will open up the door to these new technologies that are going to be built on top of it. And it's, like you couldn't guess that Amazon was going to be born when the first public-private key pair was created. I don't think we can even realize now what's going to be the impact of this shift.
Wow. The implications are far-reaching there, for sure. So in a nutshell, you're really simplifying this new gen confidential computing paradigm
Yes.
and making it usable by many different kinds of customers. And that is something that is, I think it's got a lot of promise. So congratulations, Ayal, on this, and we'll keep a close tab on Anjuna. What does Anjuna mean? What does that name mean anyway?
So Anjuna, well, it means bliss in Sanskrit, but it actually goes back to this little town in Goa, India, that my co-founder visited and loved, and that's why we decided to name the company after it.
I like it. It's very creative. Thank you. Ayal, thank you very much for being on eSpeaks. This has been great. An overview that's important for our readers to know about, and they can search on it. If they need to get more information, can they go to, is it Anjuna.com or is it some other domain?
Anjuna.io.
.io, remember that. Okay. Thanks, Ayal, very much. It's Ayal Yogev, the CEO of Anjuna, New Gen Security Company. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
And for everybody following along on this version of eSpeaks, thanks and have a great rest of your eWeek. Thanks for joining us on eWeek eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.